Good morning and welcome to the October MTA board meeting. Let's begin with our safety announcement, and then Ms. Contino will call on our public speakers.
Your safety is of foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen to the following instructions. In the event of an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and 911 should be called. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell D down the hallway past the elevators. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. Thank you and have a safe day.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have 39 members of the public registered to speak today. Now, for our public speakers, whom I would like to remind, in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we will limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware of the clock at the front of the room and the warning light you will see reminding you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. The first speaker is John Ciarello, followed by P. Rusconi.
Mr. Chairman, MTA Board, my name is John Ciarello. I'm the Vice President of Maintenance OA of the Department, TWU Local 100. MOW has more than 8,000 workers in track, structure, power, and line equipment signals. Our members are largely responsible for the implementation of the Subway Action Plan that has resulted in better on-time performance, fewer delays, higher speeds, and all in all, better ride for New Yorkers. We save the seconds. I am here today not on that count. I'm here today because I was CC'd on an email sent by Mr. Chairman Foy to Local 100 President Tony Utano on Sunday afternoon, October 13th, the day before Columbus Day. This now infamous email was the subject of several articles in the Daily News in which Mr. Chairman accused Local 100 President Tony Utano of promoting what's labeled as the Utano Specialty Drug Scam. You, in fact, used the term 22 times in your crazed email, while also accusing Utano of proposing a corrupt and unlawful scheme that you also said was racist and anti-immigrant. Then you signed off your email with a snarky, "Have a peaceful Columbus Day," which is an Italian stereotype, ugly and smacks the face of every Italian and continues that we face in society today. This is beneath the office that you hold. First of all, you and your entire MTA negotiating team know that the characterization of Payometrics plan as unlawful and corrupt is categorically false. The company will probably sue you. You've been whining to the press for months. The MTA has no money, you have no money, you're broke. So we showed you a way to save significant money in the upwards of $40 million in prescription drug costs, and you did what some angry riders often do to our transit workers. You spit in our face. So we get it. You don't need the money. You don't want the money. So we have a message for you. Don't come asking for give backs in the contract. You're not getting them. One more thing, Chairman Foy. The president of Local 100 has a name, an Italian name, and he comes from good stock. And he's honest as the day is long. His name is Tony Utano, not Tony Soprano.
Thank you. The next speaker is Pete Rusconi, followed by John Ferretti.
Morning, members of the board. My name is Pete Rusconi. I'm a bus operator and a two-time elected vice president of Transport Workers Union Local 100, private bus lines, MTA bus, and school bus companies. I represent more than 6,000 men and women who are employed by the MTA bus company and several private transportation companies located in Westchester and in the Bronx. I'm going to keep this short, not so sweet. Chairman Foy, you dragged a good man's reputation through the mud, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You wrote an email and accused Local 100 President Tony Utano of being corrupt, and then, surprise, surprise, it leaked out to the press. It's a pack of lies, of course, but you got what you wanted. As a second-generation Italian-American, I couldn't help but notice the last thing you wrote in the email was "Have a peaceful Columbus Day." That's the kind of respect I get. He just walks out while I'm talking to him.
Can we put it on pause and hold it till he gets back? Can we pause this time? Can we pause this time? We're responding to a direct person.
He's paid to be here.
Keep going, Pete.
Pause this time. Keep going, Pete. Get it out. It's recorded.
Why would you write that? The answer is because you know some people believe the stereotype that Italians are criminals and mobsters. You did the same thing when you directed the MTA police officers to go into the work locations and watch workers punch out their time clocks and fill out their timesheets. You wanted people to think transit workers are criminals. This is a sick and dangerous game you're playing. I don't know how this all ends, but I do know one thing. You pissed off 40,000 transit workers. The leadership of Local 100 and its members have zero faith that Chairman Foy can negotiate a fair contract for transit workers. Thank you.
The next speaker is John Ferretti, followed by Richard Roach.
My name is John Ferretti. I'm a shop steward and proud member of TW Local 100. There's a question that must be on the minds of New Yorkers today given the MTA's recent behavior. What is it that the MTA board and Governor Cuomo really want in your contract negotiations with transit workers? Andy Byford says that transit workers are, quote, miracle workers, and of course he's right. We make miracles happen every day to make this decrepit system starved by Wall Street's bond debt profit payments run. We are the only people keeping one of the world's largest mass transit systems running and preventing it from collapsing under the weight of all this debt and mismanagement. But yet when it comes time to negotiate with our union, the MTA board and Governor Wall Street offer us a contract proposal that is a slap in the face of every transit worker. A 4-year contract proposal that includes an effective wage cut, doubles our contributions to health insurance, paves the way for job cuts and layoffs, and demands cuts in our use of sick and vacation time. You have the nerve to demand that transit workers spend even less time with our families than the small amount we currently do. It should be clear to anyone that the MTA are the aggressors here, that transit workers have modest benefits and pay, and the rich board members and Cuomo, pushed by Wall Street and the banks, want to take away some of our most basic rights. And if so, we have every right to defend ourselves. So the question is now posed. Do you want to strike? Is that what you really want? Because that is the message you are sending by your actions to transit workers. No wonder Governor Cuomo thinks that Donald Trump's impeachment is a, quote, unproductive road. No wonder he gave Trump and his family a pass on jail time for their Trump University crimes. He's worried about being held accountable for his own corruption. And at the MTA, Cuomo's blatant corruption is everywhere you look. For example, at the MTA at Governor Cuomo's direction, he's overseeing skyrocketing waste mismanagement and obvious corruption. We've seen some of Cuomo's leading campaign contributors receive largely no-bid construction contracts on projects like the East Side Access Project, the 7-line extension, and the 2nd Avenue subway. The East Side Access Project has ballooned to $12 billion, or nearly $3.5 billion for each new mile of track, 7 times the average elsewhere in the world. This is also an agency that has just voted to spend $81 million per elevator to be constructed at 63 stations. This price is as much as 10 times the cost for such construction elsewhere in the world.
Please conclude your remarks.
Where is Carolyn Picorni to investigate the crime and corruption of Cuomo? Who's going to jail for this fraud and corruption? Who's going to jail for exposing bus workers to asbestos for decades?
Please summarize
You
your
really
remarks.
think that you are above the law? Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Richard Roach, followed by Kenneth Murray.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Richard Roach Jr. I am a subway conductor within Subdivision C, construction flagging within New York City Transit. As a transit worker, I, or we regularly deal with verbal and physical abuse, deplorable work conditions, inadequate time breaks, and a number of different factors that I'm pretty sure most of you would likely not subject yourselves to willingly. We are the lifeblood of the 5 boroughs, and we move the millions within this great city. If we do not do what we do, New York City would undoubtedly be crippled significantly. Please bear all of this in mind when in contract negotiations. We deserve good benefits that match the cost of living here, which is getting higher and higher as the day progresses. The people who work here and make this city work should not have to struggle to live here, but we do, and you all can definitely change that. I haven't been down here long, but I'm old enough to know about how the MTA seems to waste money on what it views as a priority, i.e. unfinished stations, projects, resources, and material, as well as this tendency to wait until the very last minute to try and fix a decrepit system that is decades old. I certainly hope that if you prioritize the amassing and the allocation of said funds to projects, equipment, and infrastructure, that you would not seek to neglect your most invaluable and essential asset, the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Kenneth Murray, followed by Charles Muniz.
Justice is not a word that needs an adjective. Justice is justice. Justice is what is right. One wonders how the MTA can spend billions of dollars to reform the rail system and offer the workers a draconian contract. One way or another, the lesson will be taught. Those who forget the past will be condemned to repeat it. The New York City transit worker deserves a fair contract.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charles Muniz. Charles Muniz, followed by Alberto Alma.
Good morning. My name is Charles Muniz. I'm a cleaner for the MTA and a member of TWU Local 100. Data recently released by the MTA shows ridership over the past year has increased by 4.5%, yet this board continues to play hardball with our contract. A board stacked with at least 11 millionaires who go out of their way to insult and attack the people who do the real work in the transit system. Let's start with Cuomo henchman Pat Foy. Everybody knows he admitted under oath to lying about the fake GW Bridge traffic study. This is the man who told the courtroom that lies are immaterial. Is that why he continues lying? David Mack, a real estate developer and former state police official, and estimated to have a net worth of $70 million. This is the same Mack who was pushed off both the MTA and Port Authority boards in 2009 after he repeatedly pleaded the Fifth and failed to cooperate with an investigation into undue political interference at a state police probe. Larry Schwartz, a man whose net worth is about $3 million, who berated a lady named Rachel Faust at the March board meeting because she correctly pointed out former MTA boss Joe Loader as having a conflict of interest. Schwartz is the chair of finances and the head of business development for a local airport concession company. Port Authority controls most New York City metro airports. Larry votes on MTA programs that directly impact Port Authority revenues. How is this not illegal? And he has the nerve to call us crooks? In March 2019, board member Veronica Vanderpool said this about this board. This team that leads the authority does not accurately represent the writing public. She said we need different types of people sitting at this table that are not just representing our traditional areas of expertise. That is true reform. I couldn't agree more. Let me just add, if New York State took in an extra penny for every trade made in the New York stock exchanges, it will bring in $9 to $16 billion a year, which can be used to forever fix MTA's money problems. That is based on 3 to 6 billion trades made in New York stock exchanges every day. So instead of trying to take the money off us, why not take it off those that can afford it, the fat cats on Wall Street? Oh, one more thing.
Please conclude your remarks.
Richard Ravitch, former MTA head Richard Ravitch said, Cuomo's running this. He's the CEO. He's not supposed to be the CEO.
Summarize
the
your
chairman
comments,
is supposed
please.
to be the CEO. Let's get this straight.
Our next speaker is Alberto Alma, followed by Nicole Williams.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you can hear me through this thing, but I know my partner 4 cars up or 11 cars up can't hear me through this thing. New York City Transit has a rule that if you're a work train operator or construction flagger, you must wear one of these, especially in your beloved L-Line project. Now, if I'm moving a train and I'm the eyes and ears of the person who's operating the locomotive 4 to 11 cars out, how is he supposed to hear me through this to give him direction safely so that we don't run over somebody or derail a train? Doesn't that sound a little ludicrous to any of you here? On top of that, with the conditions in that L-Line tunnel, we have no choice but to wear this for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day in 100-degree heat. And you have this rule where you can only operate the tunnel fans for 30 minutes at a minimum to a maximum of 2 hours. Meanwhile, the construction project is going over the whole weekend. Don't you think it's kind of stupid to cut off the air to 100+ workers down in that tunnel? Well, then again, you guys don't care because you guys have never done our jobs before. You guys have never touched a train or done any kind of skilled labor. Fat cats sitting on comfy chairs. You guys think about safety? I doubt it. I highly doubt that you guys care about safety. On top of that, you guys waste money on a track mobile unit that's sitting at 38th Street Yard. I have the picture right in my phone. We need a remote control device to move cars from track to track? Why? You want to run over somebody with something? Oh, here's a remote control. That's safe? How is that safe? The East Side Access Project could have paid for the whole 2nd Avenue line from 125th Street all the way down to Hanover Square. But you chose 100,000 people riding LIRR over maybe 1 million people riding that Q line or the T line, which should have been from 125 to Hanover. Horrible spending, and yet we're crooks. You guys are a joke.
The next speaker is Nicole Williams, followed by Latonia Chris.
Good morning. I, Nicole Williams, RTOB Division Conductor and TW Local 100 member, stand before you all expressing deep concern for the growing crisis we have in New York City Transit Department of RTO. RTO crews have been dealing with poorly designed trains for decades. We have succumbed to operating out of small train cabs, providing little to no leg space for sitting train operators, short-stature employees having to stand on shoe paddles or bring personal stools to raise height because we have windows that do not pull down below our heads, and awkwardly positioned hand assist bars. In the latest of poorly designed trains, the R179, we strain and pivot around a window bar that protrudes 2.5 inches inward, bringing physical pain to our chest, neck, and sternum. We strain to stand on cabs, stepping stools that only provide support for the balls of our feet. After a while, working becomes strenuous and we suffer in silence. Many RTO employees are developing health problems due to inadequate time for lunch. Factors such as service disruptions, severe service delays, and train congestion impedes on our ability to eat a proper lunch. Oftentimes, we eat en route from terminal to terminal, or we don't eat at all. Many newly hired employees into RTO titles are assigned different reporting hours daily in various boroughs that add hours of commuting time, which impedes on our adequate rest for our safety-sensitive job titles. While a great deal of women are being hired, our facilities remain the same. At many terminals, we still operate out of a single bathroom stall, oftentimes using men bathrooms, who have 2 to 3 stalls and 3 urinals. We need a more reasonable accommodations. Women in particular still lack lockers to accommodate us, forcing us to carry our bags on our back at all times. Especially women, expectant women, recourse for light duty as platform, which may require long periods of standing, or deliver mail, which may be extremely heavy. Furthermore, we are still deficient in lactation facilities at every terminal. In closing, we implore MTA and New York City Transit to consider our challenges and resolve them. By expanding facilities throughout New York City Transit and creating spacious bathrooms and locker rooms for women, retrofitting trains and designing trains with the assistance of an ergonomist to address the comfort level of all persons operating them. Strategically reviewing how RTO distribute jobs for newly hired titles to ensure proper rest by creating and implementing a mandatory professional training for all titles throughout New York City Transit.
Miss, please wrap up.
Will save tremendous money in the long run. It will prevent many occupational illnesses, lower employee IODs, boost workplace morale, improve employee availability, and ensure safer and healthier environmental work conditions for all persons. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Latonia Chris, followed by Lynn Richard.
Good morning, Board. My name is Latanya Chris, Recording Secretary, TWU Local 100, and proud to say the highest ranking female officer in the union. I stand here today to present to you in a format of A Tale of Two Cities. My concern as a woman that is employed by MTA, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. We as women need accommodations when we come to the company. My concerns are that we don't keep the women working in a healthy and safe condition. My other concerns are operators. I'm a bus operator out of TA Surface. When the babies are starting to grow, it's not the same as someone who may have diabetes. It's not the same as someone that may have back problems. We get behind these wheels and we no longer can fit. If the ramp for the wheelchair doesn't work anymore, that ramp now turns from 0 pounds to almost 80 pounds if we as pregnant women have to lift that ramp. These are things that are not taken into consideration when we're asking for reasonable accommodations. I have had it with women who are calling me out of RTO having misslipped off of trains where they're coupling, where they can't fit into the cabs as conductors. We really need to look at how you are treating women in this place. I see a lot of women here. It must be great to be able to walk 5 seconds or 10 seconds to a restroom. We don't have that when we're on the train or on the bus. We do not want a supervisor writing us up for taking a personal because we need modifications, we need water, we need breaks. But if you don't want us to mess up your system and you don't want us to call personals, please, reasonable accommodations. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Linwood Richard, followed by Assemblymember Harvey Epstein.
I want to take this time to express my further outrage. Hold those pictures up. Hold those pictures up. Open it. I want to take this time to express my further outrage. First of all, I want to thank Pat Furroward for coming back now to hear this message we're about to introduce to you. First of all, we want to state that when we dealt with the metrics, you have been deceptive, you have been manipulative, you have been embryonic, expressive in your literary expressions to this email, to this board here, who has a copy of that email that you sent. It was childish, and it shouldn't have been. Moving forward, the board, you had the email, and the board is always constructed of a body of Caucasian people that is proportion to its point where you don't think that black intelligence, Chinese intelligence can come from people of a different hue. So that's what this personified at this time. Moving forward, the company payout metrics that was sent to you by, we discussed with the president, they already has a credible reputation with the retail district. Possibly could save, we brought it to your attention that can save you over $40 million. All you had to do was say no with the specialty drugs. I am right now a victim or a survivor in our family with a person who has cancer. Hold these pictures up. We now currently experience these cancerous effects in these conditions that we face each and every day now here. I've compiled the information for you, a 70 or 80 page report where it can sit on your desk and illustrate to you the conditions that we currently face now in the New York Transit Authority's contract. You attacked our president and his lineage. That is one of the most deceptive and deceitful things that you could have done as a leader. When you attack someone's lineage, and you attack Christopher Columbus as though there's a corrupt aptitude or corrupt personification to it, that is the highest. We're asking you to recuse yourself. Sit down. We cannot any further discuss anything with you. Also with the police, you're using terms of timekeeping fraud as though this is the prison industrial complex when we here are suffering from these conditions now. In closing, I say to you, Pat Fraud, Don't disrespect our president. Hands off our president. You need to sit down and come to the table. Section 1.1 of our contract is a declaration that tells us that we sit down and we come in good faith to you. Section 1.7 of our contract clearly states that we have a reciprocal obligation to sit and
Please conclude your remarks.
and surmise our intelligence together in a cooperative effect. You displayed conduct that is distasteful, embryonic, insulting. We're not taking it. Understand that this is a different machine. Hands off our president and our TWU. Trust me when I tell you that.
Sir, please summarize remarks.
Stand down.
Our next speaker is Assembly Member Harvey Epstein, followed by Senator Brad Hoylman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Harvey Epstein. I'm an Assembly member in the 74th Assembly District. Thank you for the chance to speak today. Before I go to my remarks, I just want to really honor the work of the brothers and sisters. I just want to honor what the brothers and sisters of labor are talking about. These are real issues that I hope you take really seriously. I encourage you to sit down with them and really have good faith negotiations, because what they're talking about is really important for all of our city to make it work. So thank you. But really what I'm here to talk about is accessoride and accessoride and on-demand for people with disabilities. We have a huge disability community in New York City, and it was really exciting when you piloted the on-demand program with 1,200 individuals. What we've learned from the on-demand program is that it works. It works for New Yorkers. It works for those 1,200 people. It works for people to get to work. It works for people to get to school. It works for people to get around the city. We have the most inaccessible subway system in the country, and we have the largest subway system in the country. And New Yorkers with disabilities need to have access. We figured out this on-demand is cheaper. It means it's more affordable for all of us to have an on-demand system. It means people are using it. It means people like it. So while Accessoride is a program that has lots of problems, on-demand does not. The idea that the pilot ends at the end of the year is really disconcerting for people like me and the advocates all over the city. We need a commitment from you to ensure on-demand is strengthened and supported and expanded for people all over New York City. It's an affordable, important way for people to go to and from work, to and from school, to live their lives, and I encourage you to strengthen it and support it and not end this program, this amazing pilot program. Thank you all.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Our next speaker is Senator Brad Hoylman, who will be followed by J.P. Patafio.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Brad Hoylman. I represent Chelsea, Greenwich Village, Hell's Kitchen, the Upper West Side, and the East Village. First, I want to acknowledge the extremely hard work and extremely difficult conditions of TWU Local 100 and urge you to support their call for a fair contract. I stand with you. Second, I also represent the entire length of the 14th Street busway, and I am happy to report that every day is like Sunday morning on 14th Street. And that's thanks to the work of the MTA and the Department of Transportation for the city, and urge you to continue that work forward, as well as compliment you on your L-train work thus far. I have received exactly 0 complaints from constituents in that regard. But that's not the only reason I'm here. As was reported recently, the MTA has brought about 500 new state-hired police officers to our transportation system, in part to give out tickets to New Yorkers who can't afford the subway at an enormous cost, as you know, about $663 million over 10 years. What concerns me is that there is a lack of accountability with these officers, and I would urge the board to look at the possibility of requiring these officers to wear body cameras while they are in our transportation system. We have, in my office, received a number of concerns from constituents that there is a lack of accountability over these officers as they patrol our subway system. Body cameras, I think, would add a level of confidence and accountability to these officers, just like we require them in New York for the NYPD. I will also add that if the board does not pursue body cameras for these officers, we'll be considering legislation to do so in Albany. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is J.P. Patafio, followed by Robert Griswold.
Hello, I am J.P. Patafio, John Paul Patafio, Vice President of Brooklyn Buses. I was going to address Patrick Fraud and his ridiculous email, but really what I want to do is I want all the transit workers to stand up. Stand up. All of these workers and their comments, what they said, their analysis, their insight, the board needs to take heed. That man there is a liar. I was at a meeting where he agreed to this plan, and then he sends out that bullshit email. You just pissed us off. And I welcome you to come downstairs on October 30th. Because we'll have some tar and feathers for him, right? Because that's what you do to a fool. You put some tar and feathers on him. Keep on poking the bear. The board, you have a real decision before you. You let this man lead you down the road to ruin? Or you take him out of negotiations. You poke the bear too much, the bear gets up and smacks you in the head. Where the bear? Who's the bear? Where the bear? Have a good day.
The next speaker is Robert Griswold, followed by Suzanne Shi.
My name is Robert Griswold. I'm with the Mayday Student Organization, a citywide student organization dedicated to struggling around student and worker demands. We're here in support of the workers of TWU Local 100. It is the discipline and labor power of thousands of workers cooperating in unison who make our transit system function. Yet the system is managed in the interests of a small minority of capitalists. Capitalists rely on the subway to get their employees to work so they can exploit them for profits. The more expensive it is to provide the basic needs of workers, including their transportation, the more those costs cut into the profits of the capitalist class as a whole. This is why capitalists want to pass along the costs of transportation and other public services like education and healthcare to the working class. This is why they want to make the cost of transportation, education, healthcare, and other necessities as cheap as possible. They don't care how unsafe or dysfunctional conditions in the subway, in our homes, or in our schools become. It is hard to believe that in America, one of the richest and most developed countries in the whole world, debris from subway tracks falls on pedestrians, that a mother can die trying to carry her child's stroller down the stairs to the train, that water poisoned with lead is pumped into homes and schools, that air with asbestos is pumped into workplaces in East New York, that funding for education is cut year after year while tuition goes up and up. This irrational behavior is all because the capitalist system serves the interests of profit and not of the people. Learn from the mistakes of your counterparts in Santiago, Chile. The people of Chile have raised their heads. When will the people of New York City?
The next speaker will be Suzanne Chi, followed by Jesse Gauger.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Chi. I'm an advocate for the Center of Independent of Disabled New York. I urge the board member to please expand the pilot on-demand program. As a New Yorker with people with disability deserve the right to travel like people without disability. The only program that will help us to enjoy the life just like every other New Yorker is the on-demand pilot program. As you all know, we have the most inaccessibility subway system in New York. How am I going to get around? How the other people going to get around? When you need to up and go, I shouldn't have to plan my trip a day or 2 days in advance. Nobody else do that in here. Only people with disability have to do that because we don't have fully accessibility in subway system. I please urge you to expand it as soon as possible to all the people with disability and elderly. Knowing that subway system is hard to use, even though if you have the fully accessible, because there's always a gap between the subway system. Like, I remember at one time I wasn't able to use the subway system. I couldn't get anywhere because I don't have the pilot program. I have to wait until the next day to reschedule my appointment. I shouldn't have to go do that. I should live my life just like everyone else. I should be able to go to work and come back and without have to worry about whether or not, if Accessory gonna pick me up, whether or not I'm gonna get stranded by Accessory. Knowing that Accessory is the best service, knowing that Accessory is really bad service. I have seen myself, I was not being picked up. That was like many years ago. I was like, just because they're not reliable. Who want to sit in an Accessory 3 hours just for one appointment? I have to leave my house at least 2 to 3 hours ahead of the appointment time when you use the subways, when you use the Accessory system. I don't want to have to leave my house so early for 5 minutes appointment. You don't do that. None of these board members do that in this room. You gotta get up and going. We don't do that. I don't get up and go. So please expand it. I know it's much cheaper than Accessory.
Please summarize your comments.
It's much cheaper system.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jesse Gauger.
My name is Jesse Gauger. I'm a member of the May Day Student Organization, a citywide group that is linking students with working class struggles against capitalist exploitation and oppression and fighting for a free and universal education for all working people. I'm here today to read an open letter from students on the transit workers' struggle, initiated by the MDSO and signed by 14 other student organizations so far. We call on our peers to stand with the transit workers who moved New York and who are now engaged in a bitter fight for survival against the MTA bosses. After the last contract expired 5 months ago, the MTA demanded a series of concessions from their workers, including a cut in real wages, higher health insurance premiums, the replacement of certain full-time with part-time positions, and an increased use of private contractors, which should be seen for what it is, union busting. These conditions will make it even more difficult for transit workers and their families to survive in New York City. Notably, the majority of transit workers are Black and Latino, making this contract struggle an important battle in the fight for equality of all peoples. The MTA will spend $2.7 billion, or 16% of its operating budget, this year to service its debt to rich bondholders. Meanwhile, it hikes fares, cuts service, and forces bad contracts on transit workers, squeezing the working people of New York City from all directions to pay its debt. Meanwhile, the politicians and their newspapers deploy tactics of divide and conquer. They incite writers to turn against workers, spreading lies about an overtime scandal. Blaming workers for the miserable state of the MTA. We know better. We remember 1966, 1980, and 2005. Without the workers, the trains do not run. As for those spreading these so-called scandals, you certainly won't catch them riding the trains. Transit is one of the few areas of work left in the city where someone can make a decent living without a four-year college degree. After imposing tuition at CUNY in the 70s and ending open admissions in the 90s, shutting the door to higher education for millions of children from working families, the rich, corrupt, and powerful are now coming after those who found other means to get by.
Please summarize your
We
comments.
must not allow things to go on like this. We must fight back. We call upon all those who agree with this message to join us in standing with the transit workers in their fight for a contract with no givebacks.
The next speaker will be Mr. X, followed by Brian Burke. Mr. X. Following Mr. X will be Brian Burke, then April Fiddler. Thank you.
Four weeks ago today, I couldn't testify. I was downstairs, but I didn't make it upstairs because a certain MTA employee who's here now decided to cut me off. That's made me feel like Abner Weemer, not to mention John Lorraine Bobbitt. I don't appreciate that, okay? If I arrive here before the board meeting starts, I should be entitled to go upstairs. And to Patricia Foy, not Patrick Foy, a schizophrenic like Dusty Rhodes, not to mention, well, if it looks like Dusty Rhodes, Next time you do that, I'm not going to waste my time talking to you. I don't play that. Okay? Now, former MTA executive director. I'm so glad you're leaving next month. Why? Primary election day 2017 held a public hearing here. And to top it off, you no-showed. And when I testified, I said, did you no-show because you knew I was testifying and you didn't want me to make you like Peter Calico or say Big Daddy Calico, the devil's disciple, whom I trashed at 347 Mass over 12 years ago? Anybody have any fond memories about that? I stuck it to him real well. When I combined her, I combined her with her tattoo by Bill Mr. Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, not to mention Beavis and Butthead. Okay? She held 5 town hall meetings with Andy Byford. At the first town hall meeting, we could get on the microphone. Then she decided to change the wording from town hall meeting to committee conversation, thus change the format. No, you're not getting on a microphone. You have to fill out an index card like you're in elementary school and pray to possibly read your statement or question. Are you serious? Without informing the public. You had another public hearing here in 2018, and you no-showed.
There are other members of the public waiting to speak. The next member is Brian Burke, who will be followed by April Fiddler.
Good morning, commissioners and public. Yes, my name is Brian Burke. I have appeared before this board previously about the fraud that you and your subordinates are committing against me. And I have to agree with Mr. Foy. We shouldn't be disparaging anybody unless, of course, we do have evidence about it. Your subordinate, Mr. Daniel Chu, an attorney in the Department of Law, in this verified pleading, he admitted now committed perjury, claiming that I was paid my differential. You, of course, owed me over $100,000 in differential wages, overtime, vacation, and sick pay. He also suborned perjury, as your attorneys here know what that means, by getting an employee, of course, where he signed it, to also additionally verify it, a Benita Quintas. This was done last year. I have evidence of from Monique Baptiste at a Unemployment Insurance Appeal Board stating under oath that I was not paid. This was from 2016, as well as hearings in front of the Workers' Compensation Board 120 by a Mr. Mr. Jacob, who said also that I was not paid under oath again. I did receive a call yesterday from a employee of the Inspector General's office who lied to me, was probably one of the most corrupt people I've ever spoken to in my whole life, named Seamus Weep or something like that. And he claimed that he investigated this in 2016. Of course, he never spoke to me. And that I was paid. Seamus Weir, I'm sorry. And I don't know if he stole my money himself or he's working with Mr. Chu, but he is committing fraud within the Inspector General's office. Now, I'm hoping to work again with the Inspector General to get this individual removed. He's a corrupt individual who's, I believe, corrupting the whole
summarize
MTA.
your comments.
And I hope to be in contact with the members of the board again. Thank you.
The next speaker will be April Fiddler, who will be followed by Eric Josephson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? My name is April Fielder. I come here as an advocate speaking as the Vice Chair of Public Service for CCSD for all 20 City University campuses. I'm an advocate for all students, especially students with disabilities. I'm here to speak about accessoride, otherwise known as stress-a-ride. The transportation is often late, as you all know. I know you know the story. It's also a no-show at times. The drivers are sometimes unskilled and unprepared to handle people with disabilities, physical disabilities and disabilities that are not seen. I asked that you reassess, reevaluate, and reconsider everything about making the transportation, or taking it back to where it was, where we had calls and the ride would come, as Susan spoke of, my colleague. All I ask is that you reassess, reevaluate, and recreate, because everyone in this room has a right to accessible transportation, and that's all we're asking for. I wasn't always disabled. This happened to me in 2016 as a result of a drunk driver. I'm a certified fitness instructor and a former dancer of 35 years. All I want to do is get back and forth to school. I'm a graduating senior. I went back to school to get a degree in exercise physiology so I can work with special populations. I shouldn't have to stress out. I've been here since 6:30 because that's what time they wanted me to be here. I asked for an 8:30 p.m. appointment. I got here at 6:30. One of the security guards said, "I've seen you just rolling around here waiting to get in the building." Nobody else is going to do that. That's all I ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Eric Josephson, followed by Diego Opperman.
My name is Eric Josephson. I am a retiree from New York City Transit. I'm still a member of Transport Workers Union Local 100. And although Chair Foy is not here at this moment, wherever he might be, he is one of the main people involved in what should be contract negotiations. But of course, negotiations mean nothing without force to back it up. It's management that acts like they have all the force, but I think they're doing this at the wrong time. That is to say, the world is blowing up. There are strikes and general strikes everywhere in the world, just about, in Catalonia, in Ecuador, in other countries, in Michigan, but there are countries, there are cities where half the adult population is in the streets on strike fighting for their rights. Things that seemed either reasonable to them the day before, or at least like they could do nothing about it. Now the workers see that these things are totally unreasonable, and the management, the bosses, to whom any screwing of the workers is of course totally reasonable, it's what they live on, they continue to slap the workers around until they find that this is no longer what people will put up with. In New York City, I see the bosses attempting to shove terrible contracts down the workers' throats here, and I see transit workers getting more and more angry. People don't know how angry the transit workers really are. When they find out, I hope that we will be able, with other workers all over the city and oppressed nationalities, will be able to take this fight forward in the way that it still is, in various countries all over the world. Long live the worker struggle. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Eric Josephson? No.
That was
Diego Opperman.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Diego. I'm with the May Day Student Organization, which, in addition to fighting for free and universal education for the working people, seeks to link the student movement to the worker struggle against exploitation and oppression. We of the MDSO wholeheartedly condemn any and all attacks on the transit workers. We condemn them when they come in the form of absurd contract proposals that cut wages and benefits while lengthening working hours. We condemn them when they come in the form of vile slanders from politicians who seek to scapegoat workers for a crisis of their own creation. We condemn demagogic attacks by the backward news media, the running dogs of the bosses and their politicians, that tried to turn riders against workers while obscuring who the common enemy is. the May Day Student Organization calls on all progressive forces to join the fight for a fair contract, a functioning transit system in the hands of the people, and to remember from the very beginning the need for political power for the working people. I'd like to conclude with a friendly reminder to the board. If the board seeks to destroy the 8-hour working day, the board should recall how the 8-hour day was won in the first place on the picket line in behind barricades, and to remember that it can happen again. Likewise, if the board thinks to raise the burden on the backs of the working people by raising fares in order to line the pockets of the rich MTA bondholders, they should recall the example of Santiago, Chile, and recall that that can happen anywhere. We should all remember that it is the people who are really powerful, not Cuomo, not his lackeys, and not the MTA board. Thank you.
The next speaker is Eric Vogel, who will be followed by Yolanda Zhang.
My name is Eric Logel, and I'm a VP of the TWU, representing workers in the Rapid Transit Operations Department. Subway conductors, train operators, and tower operators are the people who literally move the trains. I'm a train operator myself, but you don't have to be a train operator to know you can't go down 2 different tracks at the same time. Unfortunately, that's what the MTA is doing. And this basic contradiction undermines all efforts at progress in this agency. President Byford, in your fast-forward plan, you declared that the prevailing culture at NYCT must become one where good people can flourish and trust in transit is restored. You said transit must show employees we value them and refresh our approach to discipline by working in cooperation with our unions. The Save Safe Seconds and optimal operation programs aim to eliminate service delays in no small part by restoring operator confidence and building trust in the system, trust in the signaling, trust that simple mistakes won't be met with punitive discipline. For all this, the union is on board. Pat Foy, 6 months ago, you were appointed chairman and CEO of the MTA on the eve of the expiration of our contract. Presumably, you were expected to play a constructive role in settling our contract. However, over the last 6 months, our efforts at good faith bargaining have collided with a barrage of contract and past practice violations. Transit has failed to bargain in good faith, failed to maintain the status quo, engaged in repeated, provocative, unilateral changes to the terms and conditions of employment of Local 100 members in violation of the Taylor Law. These actions have shown the organization's animus towards the union, contempt for the rule of law, intent to demoralize and undermine the union's support among its employees, and intent to impose its bargaining goals without actually bargaining. Furthermore, Mr. Foy, you have treated workers like criminals and slandered our own union president as one. Board member Robert
Please
Lynn
finish your remarks.
got it right on Monday when he called out the hypocrisy of this agency with regard to its workforce. Chairman Foy, I suggest you take a clue from your more
Please
seasoned
finish your
colleagues
remarks.
and get these negotiations on the right track or recuse yourself altogether. Riders and workers deserve nothing less from the MTA. Let's get out of here.
The next speaker is Yolanda Zhang. Yolanda Zhang will be followed by Alex Lanz.
I'm just going to repeat again. The MTA management's contracts proposals are full of insults to the hardworking transit employees, including cuts to inflation-adjusted wages, an increase in the cost of health insurance, the replacement of full-time with part-time positions, and a greater use of private contractors. And the majority of the transit workers are Black and Latino, which is why this contract struggle is an important battle in the fight for the equality of all peoples. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alex Lanz, who will be followed by Elias Beeson.
Good morning. I'm Alex Lanz. I'm a student. I'm also with the May Day Student Organization. And we saw some interesting flyers on the way into number 2 Broadway this morning involving a photo competition to show off the appalling conditions of the trains and how dirty they are. And it was striking to me because it seems symptomatic of an issue that we've been looking at as the May Day Student Organization. The MTA refuses to hire enough workers for its operation and maintenance. That's the issue. You stretch the existing workforce as thin as possible, working these people to the point of injury. You try to increase productivity by strict disciplinary measures, sending auditors to spy on and harass workers when they try to call in sick. That is not in any way reasonable. You are lowering real wages by imposing bad contracts on the workers that fail to keep up with inflation. This forces MTA employees to work overtime in order to maintain their previous standard of living. The MTA should stand for the Miserly Transportation Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Elias Beeson, followed by Michael Braverman.
Hello, my name is Elias. I'm a student at the New School and a member of the May Day Student Organization. We are here in solidarity with the TWU Local 100 workers. Currently, transit workers are paid overtime when they work over 8 hours in one shift. In one of the MTA's proposed contracts, a transit employee would earn overtime only after their work week exceeded 40 hours. This means that a worker could work a 12 to 16-hour shift without being paid a single penny for overtime. Does this look like the 19th century? Because these working conditions make it look that way. Lengthening the working day and increasing the intensity of work are cheap old tricks capitalists rely upon to squeeze more surplus value out of workers. The 8-hour workday was and is a milestone for the labor movement, which was won after decades of struggle and paid for in blood. We cannot allow this board to take away basic rights the working class have fought so hard to win. Students historically have stood in solidarity with the working class and do so today. The MDSO calls on all progressive forces to unite with transit workers in a struggle for a safe and functioning transit system. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Braverman, who will be followed by Jason Pinheiro.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm a student at the New School and a member of May Day Student Organization. Why can't the MTA afford to hire enough workers for a functioning system? Why can't it ensure safe working conditions? A key reason is that the agency currently spends 18% of its budget on debt maintenance, and this proportion continues to expand. The debt grows larger every year and will never be paid off. The result of the perpetual debt is that fare increases for riders and pay cuts for workers do not result in better service, but end up going forward toward paying back interest on the agency's massive debt. The interest goes directly into the pockets of the rich, who only purchase MTA bonds in order to evade taxes in the first place. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jason Pinheiro, who will be followed by Tashia Larabor.
We should say, good morning, Patrick Foy. Good morning, Kevin Law. And good morning, Rhonda Heyman. Why I call you three out. 1, Patrick Foy, you should provide explanation why you approved back in 2017 the air train to LaGuardia Airport. If you don't provide explanation, I will inform the Inspector General to investigate your involvement in this. Second, you calling the leader of the biggest union in New York City a drug dealer, that's an insult. You know who should be sitting in your seat? Andy Byford. Because Andy Byford listens people like me, not like you, that sits there and does a lot of side talking. Kevin Law, it's an insult that you always call Babylon. Why not mention the situations that are happening in Hicksville, in Mineola? That is more dangerous than Babylon. And Rhonda Herman, if you say that you represent Westchester, be more vocal. If not, please step aside. And I'm very serious about this because I've been monitoring you for the past few months. You stay quiet in every joint commuter rail meeting. Please be more vocal. And Andy Byford, you know that.
Please finish your remarks.
I'll conclude my remarks when you guys raise the limit to 5 minutes like NJT does.
Sir, you
But
read the rules,
I'll
2 minutes per person. Please conclude your remarks.
I'll conclude my remarks saying, Andy Byford, you should be the CEO, not Patrick Foy. Patrick Foy should be fired, and you should be the next CEO of this agency.
The next speaker is Tasia Larabor, followed by Johanna Klemenko.
Morning. My name is Tasha Larabors, and I am from the community organizer for Accessoride for the Center of the Independence of the Disabled. Sydney found that only 27% of people with disabilities are employed. Along with discrimination, transportation's been a major barrier. The quotes I'll read are testimony from one advocate and a Sydney employee. Due to the 2-minute speaking time, I'll pull the key points. First one, I can get to all my jobs on time. I'm employed as an adjunct professor at NYU in Hunter. I'm also the manager and an instructor of the Assistive Technology Department at Helen Keller Services for the Blind. I love all my jobs and need to get to them on time. My employers rely on me to be on time to do my job. On Demand has made me a reliable employee and relieves me from worrying I may lose my job. I need this program to be expanded and be permanent just as it is. Second, I'm able to travel around the city independently and enjoy traveling freely like all New Yorkers. I no longer have to stress about when I get to places. Most importantly, I do not have to fear that my ride will not pick me up to go home and feel stranded because it doesn't show up. On Demand should definitely be given to all Accessoride users, just as it exists today. Sydney employees and advocates who use On Demand stress how they can live independently as people who can use subways and or buses. If their employer requires overtime or travel to a function last minute, On Demand has allowed this to happen. On Demand also gives them freedom to go out with family and friends last minute. All users we have spoken to stress the importance of On Demand in their lives and its continuation as it is. No limitation on the number of rides or additional costs to its users. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Johanna Klemenko, who will be followed by Kevin Zhang.
Good morning. I'm Johanna Klemenko, and I'm also speaking as a member of Sydney and also as a private citizen. I will certainly underline everything that Tasha said about having the great opportunity to be one of the lucky 1,200 who are e-hail passengers has absolutely made the quality of my life doable. As somebody who wears many professional hats, I can travel from one job to another. I can go to all of my medical appointments and physical therapy appointments, and with a quality of life that makes it absolutely possible. I also would like to express concern about the fact that taxi drivers are the other part of what makes this splendid program doable. And I'm concerned that taxi drivers are an endangered species, that congestion pricing has been leveled on taxi drivers. It's unspeakable. The people who should be paying congestion pricing are people who come in from the tri-state area with empty cars. Taxi drivers are the people who are supplying local transportation in the city. They're also being charged being given flat fares, which is not encouraging them to participate in this really extraordinary program. Yeah. Absolutely, this program needs to be maintained as it is, with no limitations, and it needs to be expanded as it was originally planned to cover the 99% of the 100,000 Accessoride passengers. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kevin Zhang, who will be followed by Alexis Ficus.
Hello, good morning to Andy Byford. I would like to know about subway car trash. When I watched YouTube video about the subway car trash on the 2 train from the Bronx all the way to downtown Manhattan, I saw the woman picking up the garbage bags then put the bags on the floor. Open the garbage bags and pick up the garbage stuff, then throw it on the subway seats and floor. While she picking up the garbage bags, then she eat the foods. After that, and then she clean up the garbage stuff and sweep under the subway seats. That's because of disgusting garbage bags. Try to put it on the subway car. Why not putting in the garbage bins on the subway stations and on the street garbage bins? When I throw out the garbage bin every day, please try not to put the garbage bags on the subway cars. If I see that the garbage bags and stuff on the subway cars, then I will move to another subway cars or transfer to another train. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alexis Ficus, followed by H.P. Schroer.
Good morning. My name is Alexis Ficus. I thank you for the opportunity to present this statement on behalf of Assemblymember Joanne Simon. We all know a paratransit system is mandated by the Americans with Disability Act if the governmental entity cannot run a fully accessible transit system. Clearly, New York City cannot, or at least it has not run a fully accessible transit system thus far. We are only 9 months away from the 30th anniversary of the ADA and 41 years since the regulations for Section 504 were promulgated. Service provided via a paratransit system, here Access-a-Ride, must be accessible to and be usable by individuals with disabilities, and service must be comparable to that of the transit system as a whole. Thus, Access-a-Ride must provide accessible access to transit on par with that provided to non-disabled riders. It never has. Instead, throughout its history, it has, through various methods of administration, erected barriers in the form of official policies, practices, and procedures that impermissibly narrow access to public transit, such as advance appointments only, limited numbers of trips, etc., and its internal failures to implement its policies, practices, and procedures competently, resulting in interminable delays, spotty service, stranded passengers, and a failure to make the MetroCard discounts that are available to other transit riders available to Access-a-Ride passengers. At long last, on-demand Access-a-Ride service was piloted with great success and praised by the disability community. So what does the MTA propose to do now? Cut it back, narrow the program, reduce the number of trips on-demand riders can take. Enough. Last spring, the MTA killed the advanced reservation e-hail program without consulting with the disability community, and that was wrong. The MTA should not repeat that opaque process and impermissible narrowing of service. It must fully and fairly engage the disability community in an open and transparent engagement to design and implement an Access-a-Ride program that meets the contours of the law and the transit needs of the New York City's disability community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is H.P. Schroer, followed by Ruth Lowenkron.
Good morning. My name is H.P. Schroer, Director of UMIWI. In less than a month, we will be celebrating Veterans Day, a day when some politicians thank veterans for their service, yet do nothing to help them with the cost of getting to and from work, which can run over $60,000 in the lifetime of a 24-year-old veteran. For over 100 years, veterans paid full fare on the MTA. Is that fair? Especially when simply dedicating 2 cents from every fare would make it possible to give them a discount. How? Through the concerted efforts of many, 2 state bills pending for over 4 years were rewritten, and now a majority of legislators support them. Yet the bill's sponsors refuse to include them in the budget. Is a veteran's service and sacrifice for country worth 2 cents? The public and a majority of legislators say yes. The sponsors say they don't have the money, yet the bills say they will provide the money. Members of the press looking for a story, ask Assembly members Jeffrey Dinowitz, Elaine Weinstein, and Senator John Brooks why they don't think a veteran's service is worth 2 cents. Pat Foy and I are meeting the governor's Deputy of Transportation on November the 4th. We hope to persuade the governor to give meaning to thank you for your service by announcing on Veterans Day there will be a 50% discount for all veterans, young ones and old geezers like me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ruth Lowenkron, who will be followed by Pascal Cuomo.
Good morning. I'm Ruth Lowenkron. I'm the director of the Disability Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. Our organization is part of the Accessoride Reform Group, and now you can see that in living color on my shirt and on my colleagues' shirts. Yes. So we are here today to talk about the on-demand program, and we're here to tell you, and you've already heard many of my colleagues say, it is a wonderful program. And this is not the first time that we've come out here to tell you that. We came out here the moment that program began. And we came out here with words you rarely hear about any program, let alone a government program. We have been telling you that program is life-changing. Who talks like that? It's an amazing program. So why would you consider in any way cutting back? Now, we really appreciate that you have told us that though we are facing the end of the pilot program at the end of the year, it will continue. That is wonderful. But until we hear that the program will continue in the manner you are currently providing it, in other words, without any rationing of services, we are not content. And until you tell us that not only will it continue, but that it will expand because it only covers 1,200 riders at this point in time, which is less than 1% of ridership, we are not content, and you should not be either. I think it's really important to know, too, that besides being life-saving, it costs less money. You have done the work yourself. It costs less than half to give a ride on the on-demand program. It is an absolute necessity. We continue. We have offered many times to work with you to go and fundraise, literally cap in hand to get money, more literally.
Please finish your remarks.
Assembly members who have said they are interested in funding this program, take us up on this offer, do that kind of fundraising yourself, and to repeat and finalize, we want the program continued,
Finish your remarks,
expanded,
please.
and absolutely no rationing.
The next speaker is Pascal Cuomo, who will be followed by Joe Rappaport.
My name is Pasquale J. Cuomo, and I'm speaking today for myself about LIRR RFP 6263. I've worked with Cures, who's Mary Parison Lavelle, you well know. It was Mary Parison Lavelle and Mary Arnold, often ignorantly characterized as NIMBYs, who initiated LIRR freight locomotive replacement. They petitioned elected officials, and through Andrew Hevesy, money was allocated. They have done more than anyone to modernize a decrepit and outdated LIRR freight network. As they have documented, this effort was hijacked by New York and Atlantic with LIRR's silent assent. A corrupt procurement left us stuck with 2 bad locomotives. One now seems to be out of service. The DE 30 passenger locomotives were defective upon arrival and require massive parts replacement and labor to stay in service. Yet the consulting engineer STV touts this procurement as a success. Look at their website. The M9s have problems aplenty with lots of blame to spread around, but among them was a redesign to house PTC equipment. LIRR bet they would get an FRA exemption for PTC. The public treasury had to pay for that gamble. Why does LIR have this history of bad procurements? Why are they both myopic and constricted in their view? Now we have RFP 6263, ostensibly issued to replace all 1970s-era locomotives. Promises by MTA and LIR executives spoke of finding the best locomotives the industry could offer. So they excluded the MTU Prime Mover from consideration, which happens to be the cleanest, most recently designed, and best performing engine on the market. There's a locomotive with this engine operating right now on Long Island, and you have performance information. So how does LIRR, a public benefit corporation of New York State, explain this decision which is not in the public benefit? When a doctor says, I found cancer, you have to act immediately. You don't have time. This is a cancer. We don't have all the time in the world, nor do we have all the money in the world to keep fixing these mistakes.
Please conclude
You
your
must
remarks.
act now with courage and determination. Seek and find the people who will do the work to make LIR a true public benefit corporation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
The next speaker is Joe Rappaport, who will be followed by Iman Ramanwi.
Good morning, Board. Good morning, MTA Board. I am not Joe Rappaport. I'm Valerie Joseph. Joe Rappaport is here with me. Trick or treat. That's sometimes what we call accessoride. Our ride might be a treat, and we get there when we want easily or without delays. Or it might be a trick. Our ride comes late, we are sent on the tour of the boroughs, and we get to our destination behind schedule. Today, we are handing out candy bars that reflect two sides of accessoride. You may have had them handed out to you already. We've got your To the Milky Way and Back. That's the candy bar representing the sorry side of accessoride service. It seems like you're traveling forever. Your ride goes on and on and on, all the way to the Milky Way and back. And we have your on-demand joy. Used to be almond joy, but now it's on-demand joy. It represents the good side of accessoride, the side where you don't have to figure out your plans a day or two in advance. Where can you choose, where you can choose your ride when you want, where you want, without any restrictions. That's my favorite, obviously. I'm lucky enough to have been participating in the on-demand program that has 1,200, other accessoride riders for the last 2 years. This service is dependable. I don't have to schedule everything a day in advance. I can live a normal life with on-demand. It's fantastic. Now the trick is for MTA to figure out how it can expand the on-demand program without taking away the flexibility that has made it a life-saving treat for me. Thank you, and we are willing and able to come up with other ideas to help you out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Iman Ramawi, who will be followed by Sasha Blair.
One thing also is that Assemblymember Lentil sent a letter, and I just wanted to enter into the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Iman?
Yep, I'm over here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Iman Ramawi. I work with New York Lawyers for the Public Interest as the accessoride organizer and coordinator. I'm here today to talk about how important it is to keep, expand, and not ration on demand. I take accessoride every day, and when my work plans change, on demand makes it easier for me to keep my schedule flexible if I need it, and I often need it. On a personal note, I had to do chemo for the 6th time this past August, and having on demand made it easier for me, as well as my boyfriend, to get from the hospital and to and from home without going on a tour of the city. And just in case folks don't know, side effects with low-grade chemo are still serious. I had nausea, I threw up, my stomach was a mess, I was exhausted, so much so that I could barely move. My nerves started twitching, I was barely sleeping, I was parched beyond belief, and there was no way to deal with it except to go through it. The 5 other times I underwent chemo, I had to use traditional accessoride, and it was horrible. I nearly threw up on the bus repeatedly, and I can't, I promise you. And I may have to undergo chemo again in January. So please keep on demand, expand it to every rider, and please don't ration it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sasha Blair, who will be followed by Daniel Ross.
So hi, I'm Sasha Blair Goldenson from the Rise and Resist Elevator Action Group. It's good to be here again, but we don't want to be. I'm sure you don't want to be. We want subways that are accessible to everyone. everyone. But I'm going to read today a letter that I saw in the New York Times, actually that I sent to them, and it's out there now. So the truth is out there. And it's about the capital plan and the $5.5 billion that have been allocated for accessibility improvements. Great, right? Well, spent more wisely, $5.5 billion could upgrade far more than 70 stations. This plan leaves more than 60% of our stations still inaccessible, still worst among American cities. Relying solely on costly elevators for vertical access is part of the problem, especially given that the MTA has well-known difficulties controlling costs. Ramps, like those at the 42nd Street ACE station, which I know Andy Byford has seen and is aware of because I was there with him, those are far cheaper, and they are a viable alternative when the vertical distance to travel is short, because our subway is often not that deep underground. Use them where you can to stretch those dollars further. Because unlike the notoriously unreliable elevators, ramps never break down, and they don't need to be maintained. They're not the endless gravy train going to the very short list of no-bid contractors in Governor Cuomo's good friends who do those elevators at $80 million a station in this proposal, which is preposterous. We can do better. We must do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Ross, who will be followed by Bruce Hain.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Ross. I'm a staff attorney at Mobilization for Justice, which is a member of ARG, the Accessoride Reform Group. I'm lucky. My disability doesn't prevent me from taking the bus and the subway, at least not yet. So, unlike Accessoride users, I have an unlimited Metro card. And unlike Accessoride users, the more I ride, the cheaper each ride becomes. And I use my Metro card a lot to commute to work, to see friends, to visit a museum or see a play, to rush to a last-minute meeting for work, or to visit a loved one in the hospital. Accessoride's on-demand pilot, which has allowed 1,200 Accessoride users to book travel as they need it, has enabled them to finally use the city in more or less the same ways I always have. You have heard how life-changing this service has been for the lucky few who have finally been able to experience transit on demand. But for those of us who don't use Accessoride, it might be easier to understand by imagining how life-changing it would be for us to rely on the service. Need to work late tonight? Too bad. Mom fell and you need to go to the hospital? Too bad. Feeling tired and want to cancel your plans after work tonight and go home and rest? Too bad, your trip is already booked. For those of you who run late like I do, remember, more than 5 minutes and you've missed your ride. Unless it's late, in which you might be waiting 10, 20, 30 minutes or more. The on-demand pilot is one of the biggest successes in the MTA's history. And the price tag at less than $9 million last year, it's also one of the cheapest in the MTA's history. This pilot must be expanded to more people, and in the future to all Accessoride users. You haven't limited my monthly Metro card, and you won't. The political outcry would be too great. So why would you limit Eman's or Valerie's or anyone else's? This is a program that works, and more people, more people need to be able to use it. Limiting service should be your last choice, not your first choice. Go ahead, transform more people's lives.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bruce Hain, who will be followed by Mr. Charles. Mr. Charles will be followed by Gian Padula.
Morning. This is going to be more transit-oriented for change of pace. Let's see if I can do this on the phone here. It's safe to say there is no mention of the committee in the committees of any sketch assessment final report on the Rockaway Beach branch. The report pits an impossible subway alignment against the Long Island Railroad connection in an extreme state of dissolution. and does it to pretty convincing effect. Besides spending money on an impossible subway alignment, with the assent of the client team, I suppose, the report fails to mention that the line is the only feasible option for a one-seat ride to the airport. If you're going to provide for future capacity, you have to understand that the intention of the original planners. There is a reason why you have 6 tracks going west from White Pot and on from Woodside with a Port Washington flyover. They probably intended to have it go under, but it has to be a flyover now, which is it's an interesting idea. The AirTrain people mercifully left an excellent option for connecting the line to Howard Beach. The line from Howard Beach. There's a place to connect it. And a reviving of Glendale Junction would allow putting trains in service from Morris Park. That's a big capacity enhancement. You're going to need that. You've got to understand how that goes there. I got a drawing for you. I'll show you. Also, that trains, the yard to the north of Jamaica Station, that thing was designed not for 12-car trains. You've got something crazy in there, a reverse curve. It's got like 12 feet between it. They go over that thing at 30 miles an hour.
Please conclude your remarks.
You've got to get rid of that and put trains in service from Morris Park someday, you know, after you get rid of the 20,000 diesels or whatever it is. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Mr. Charles, who will be followed by Gian Padula, who will be followed by Muhammad Sultan. Mr. Charles?
Hold you. There you go. Man.
Good morning, members of the board. As I'm going to be speaking about Access Ride e-Hail On Demand program, as President Byford might be aware, in London they have great assistance where when a person with disabilities goes to the ticket barrier, they get escorted by a subway employee and escorted onto the subway train where they are met at the destination platform where they go to by another subway employee. We don't have that here, but we've gone one step further. We've done better. This is New York City, isn't it? Yes. And we have the on-demand pilot program a lot better. And MTA maintain transit accessibility, and we're doing that. And the way we carry on to maintain transportation accessibility is by paying the yellow cab drivers the metered fee, not the flat rate fee. That doesn't make sense and is heartbreaking for the drivers, the poor hard-working drivers who you know have been struggling and also been victim to suicide and other issues due to the devaluation of their medallion, and they need to make a living also, and it's heartbreaking for them to decide whether they pick up someone with a disability who they know need this service or to reject the trip, and some of them have rejected the trips. And I just want to say this service helps break down isolation, helps disabled people to mix with able-bodied people, to give them a good quality of life. You know, we do have a life, and unfortunately some people think we just have friends and family to look after us, but there's some people with disabilities who, like myself, who live on their own and need the service, especially if we need to do something urgent, like we realized maybe we run out of a refill of a medication or something like that. It's great that I can call up the taxi and be able to go to CVS or something like that and fill my prescription. So, you know, this service, please expand it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The next speaker is Gian Padula, followed by Muhammad Sultan.
Say Mohammed Sultan, right? Yes?
I believe Mr. Padula is before you.
the mic?
When you're ready.
Where's the mic? Oh, there it is. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula. I'm a supervisor at Educational Vision Services, and I also serve on the ACTA committee. So disabled or not, folks, we all do things differently. And as a blind person, there's a multitude of non-visual approaches, tools, techniques that I have to utilize. And that's why it was so exciting last week to be a part of the Accessible Station launch, because there was a multitude of options there, high-tech, low-tech, that involved a lot of different apps, new braille signage, tactile guideways, tactile maps, and you're giving people choice. And when you give people choice, you increase their likelihood of success. And in the midst of all of this excitement, I just hope that we don't forget about Accessoride, because that needs to be a viable choice, because it's not one size fits all. And for me, as a blind supervisor, Accessoride, thanks to the eHail program, it allows me to do my job professionally on an efficient level, on par with my sighted colleagues. And we need to figure out how to make eHail sustainable, because when I started booking same-day trips a year and a half ago, I realized it gives me the same autonomy and access to opportunities as my non-disabled citizens, and it was an eye-opening experience. I just got to tell you. I realize things are a double-edged sword. There's no one right answer. There's no magic bullet. I get it. It's a huge onion. So you got a lot of users, but we got to figure this out. People with disabilities can contribute. Do not mistake our disability for inability. Low expectations lead to low outcomes, and so people, if we give people viable options, people with disabilities can contribute and allow us to live the life that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mohammed Sultan, who will be followed by Lauren Pine.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Sultan, Triple Sultan. I'm from New York Taxi Worker Alliance as an organizer and a taxi driver. My solidarity with the MTA, TWU, with the workers, and my brother and sister right here, Accessible Ride, we love to take them. This is the best thing we have. That's it. We take them with the love and with the respect. And they are waiting for a taxi. You are waiting in a subway or in your car. There is no difference. Only the difference, they cannot go with like you. That we are ready to take it. And we love to take them. The problem is that there is a problem that when you release the money, you should also know where is the other end getting it. You know how much is the driver getting in? I give you two examples in the name of flat rate. Pick up 210 East 64th Street in Manhattan and going to be in Bronx. 1465 Townsend Avenue in Bronx. You know how much is the fare? Flat fare, $4.22. This is another one. The 7th Avenue, 7th Avenue, in a pickup from in Manhattan, and drop off 18 Large Avenue in New Jersey. You know how much it is the flat fare? Only 10 cents. Only 10 cents. 10 cents. So how this taxi driver will be survived to taking this fare? I do understand that none of you probably have a understanding who is taking this accessible right people by this driver and how much they're getting. 9 drivers suicide in this situation last 1 year. So because of the financial economic struggling, this driver need to be survived, and our brother and sister also need to be right every single day. We support this service. We need to be extend this service. In the same time, our brother and sister who is taking this fare, they should be livable income too. We need to be get this fare. We need to be upfront price should be end. Please taking care of this.
The next speaker is Lauren Pine, who will be followed by Jian Horn.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Pine, and I don't like public speaking, but I will get up here and speak in support of Access-a-Ride Reform Group and expanding the e-hail and on-demand services in Access-a-Ride. I lost my leg at the hip in a crash involving a 10-wheel dump truck while I was crossing the street 2 years ago in New York City. I'm a nurse. I would love to go back to work. Guess what is a huge consideration for me accepting a job right now? Getting there. And I'm not alone. I'm speaking for everybody, especially the people that couldn't be here today or the people that tried to get here today but are still at home because their Access-a-Ride did not show up. Thank you so much for listening. I really do hope that we can all agree that this is an affordable, sustainable program. When I hear about all the improvements being made at Hudson Yards on that escalator, I think, you know, you guys have the money. Let's put it in the right place. Let's put it for people that are going to help make this city great. Let's help people that live here be functioning and happy and welcoming of the tourists instead of sitting at home miserable while they get to ride their shiny escalators. I will be back. I hope I don't have to come back, but I'm really happy to be a part of this group. I'm a new member. I hope to be working, but while I'm not, guess what? I'm going to show up to all of these. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gian Horn, who will be followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning. First of all, as a member, I think I've told you before that I have had Access-a-Ride for 22 years, and I'm a Forbes contributor, and being on the same day e-hail pilot has enabled my life and my career to flourish. I've spoken at the UN 3 times in the past year, and I'm continuing to grow, and I'm asking Access-a-Ride and the MTA to grow with me, please. We can work together. We can figure out the finances. It's only money. Let's talk about life for a minute. Okay, I want to share the story of somebody that's not me at all. When I was on this program, I visited a friend whose mother was very sick and needed to visit the hospital on a daily to weekly basis. And she was waiting 2-3 hours sometimes and missing these appointments. And he begged me, how do I get in touch with somebody? What do I do? And so I shared the program that I was on with this wonderful woman who has now passed away. And I have to tell you, I just had dinner with him last week, the son of this woman, and he said to me, thank you so much. You saved hours and weeks of her life so that I could spend it with her. So when you think about it, I mean, this is much bigger than a budget, right? This is a life-changing thing you're doing, and it seems like there's some issues that the MTA is working on. Why not keep the one program where there are no complaints, where there are only your praise for you and what you're doing? Please, please, please keep this going and expand it. We love it, and it's more than money. It's life. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Ellen Shannon, followed by Rachel Foss.
Excuse me. Well, sort of in the category of now for something completely different. My name is Lisa Daglian. I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, or PCAC. On October 24, 2018, I made my first comments to the board in my role here. I spoke about 2 different task force efforts to reduce transit's complex and lengthy procurement procedures and addressing key cost drivers and schedule delays to bring down the price of capital projects. We're seeing the benefits of those efforts now and look forward to continued success. Indeed, over the past year, we've seen significant changes that benefit riders in both the short and long term. This board, the leadership around the room, and all of the more than 74,000 MTA employees are making this transformation possible. A year ago, we weren't sure if congestion pricing would pass and bring its much-needed dedicated funding stream to Fast Forward. The good news, of course, is that it did pass, thanks to Governor Cuomo and his partners in the state legislature, and a lot of hard work from people in this room. The better news is that the Long Island Railroad and Metro North riders will also benefit from these funds through the visions laid out in LARR Forward and Metro North Way Ahead. We didn't know what the FY 20 to 24 capital plan would look like, And now we know the region will benefit from the unprecedented investment in our infrastructure that has sorely been needed, with new signals, tracks, rolling stock, and accessibility that will transform the system. As a 7-line rider, I know how CBTC changes things. The increased ridership and improved on-time performance are testaments to what a difference these kinds of investments can make. At the same time, the bus network is being redesigned to meet the needs of today's riders. We're really excited also about the move towards more transparency, including the new budget dashboard. The next year will be challenging, and the new transformation plan, large deficits, and the need for a dedicated funding stream for revenue, for operating funds, the implementation of congestion pricing, and the kickoff of the capital plan. Obviously, there's still more to be done, and we look forward to what the next year will bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen Shannon will be our next speaker, followed by Rachel Foss.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Shannon, also with the PCAC. Today's a momentous occasion. We anticipate that you as a board will vote to award a more than $500 million package or kickoff of congestion pricing. We should ring it in and celebrate that the hard work of Sam Schwartz, Alex Matheson, Riders Alliance, Tri-State Transportation Campaign, the Strap Hangers Campaign, the governor, and our elected officials who came together to understand the current crisis our surface transportation is in. So it's also a turning point day, or it can be. It's time for another major mind shift that should take place here in this room, by this board, and by our elected officials. It's time to say that with a new funding stream and with added service, we can grow ourselves out of the MTA deficit, not cut its way out by cutting service. We can do this because of the remarkable performance numbers we have seen over the past year consistently improving. Improved throughput, dramatically fewer delays, dramatically improved on-time performance, and improved speeds. How is the public responding? With their Metro cards. And what do these improvements really mean? They mean that over the last 2 years, the track capacity of the system has increased. Faster trains, more reliable trains, means more track capacity. Now with the new bus cameras and redesigned bus routes and expanded SBS, the same is possible on buses too. Moving forward with congestion pricing should be accompanied with a new Get On Board marketing campaign, one that adds service and doesn't take it away. You can do a cost-benefit analysis on how many riders we need to balance the budget, and then add that service to make it happen.
Please finish your remarks.
You can make us thrive as a city and region, the one that we are, with a fantastic MTA system that our operating agency presidents and their teams of people have made happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Foss will be our final speaker.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Foss. I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable state government, including authorities like the MTA. We would like to thank the MTA, in particular Chairman and CEO Foy and his team, for beginning to fulfill a long-time request from the advocacy community for providing more fiscal information in an open data format. We are glad to see the MTA has published a large amount of open budget data via its new budget transparency website. We appreciate Chairman Foy's work to start making good on his pledge from April 2019 to overhaul the MTA's open data and freedom of information law processes. Dating back to 2012, reInvent Albany and members of the New York City Transparency Working Group, co-chaired by reInvent Albany and Jean Rushinoff of the Strap Hangers campaign, asked the MTA in writing and in meetings with Bob Ferran and the budget staff to make financial data provided in board books available in spreadsheet form. For the first time, components of the MTA's budget have been publicly released in machine-readable Excel format via the new budget transparency website. This follows the MTA's release of a spreadsheet of its 2020-24 capital project list in September. These are the first steps of what we hope will be much more open data released by the MTA and a renewed commitment to comply with the governor's executive order of 95 of 2013, which created the New York State Open Data Portal. In reInvent Albany's Open MTA report from May of this year, we identified releasing more open data as one important step the MTA can take to renew public trust. We hope the MTA will expand upon this by overhauling FOIL, improving upon its capital dashboard for the 2020-24 capital program to make it more complete and user-friendly, and releasing even more open data. The board books alone have a vast amount of tabular data that could be easily published in an open data format, such as on topics from diversity of the workforce, ridership, overtime, fare evasion, and many more topics that receive a great deal of public discussion. Again, thank you, and we look forward to more work by the MTA on transparency in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public comments.
Kate, thank you. I want to thank our public speakers today for their candor. I'd like to start today with a moment of recognition and acknowledgement for some key members of the MTA team. First, although she'll be with us happily through the end of November, today is our last board meeting. I want to take a meeting to recognize and thank Ronnie Hakam, the MTA Managing Director. Ronnie has been a tremendous and honorable leader at this agency, a trusted advisor, and a good friend to everybody around this table in our times here. And I know the same is true for many of you as well. Ronnie began her career at the MTA in 1987 as an attorney with New York City Transit and served in a range of capacities, including general counsel and EVP of capital construction. She then spent some time across the Hudson, leading New Jersey Transit as executive director, then serving as executive director of the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. Ronnie returned to New York City Transit in 2015 as the agency's first female president, before taking the helm as managing director, overseeing the operating agencies and keeping this region moving forward every day. Ronnie has literally led transportation agencies, including every mode of transportation, except for space exploration. Ronnie, you've been a true leader in every sense of the word, providing a steady hand in navigating complicated situations, offering support, wisdom, and perspective with patience and grace to anyone who asked, and setting a stellar example of what it means to serve the public, always keeping safety, reliability, and customer service foremost in mind. I've personally learned much from you working with you, Ronnie, over the last 2 years, and in our encounters when I was at the Port Authority and you were at one of the two New Jersey agencies. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to work with you. And I, along with the entire MTA family and each of our 8 million daily riders, thank you for your service to the MTA and to the region. I'm going to ask one or two of the agency presidents, just maybe Andy and Kathy, to say a couple of words about Ronnie's service.
Thank you so much, Pat. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to tell Ronnie how much she's meant to me and to Metro North over the past however many years. I first met Ronnie when I joined MTA as general counsel in 2003. I think you were just transitioning over to capital construction at that point in time. I also want to give her a shout out as one of the preeminent female leaders of this organization. She was the president of New York City Transit for a time before transitioning over to managing director, and she has been an inspiration to the women of this organization every day in terms of how she leads, her intelligence, her insight, her grace under pressure. She inspires all of us every day, and I wish her nothing but the best as she moves on to her next stage of her career.
Ronnie, I can only echo that. On behalf of New York City Transit, we owe you a huge debt of thanks, not only as an inspiration to the women of New York City Transit, the fact that you were the first female president of the organization, but also the fact that everything we're doing builds on the work that you initiated. And on a personal note, I'd just like to say thank you for the faith you've put in me and the chance that you gave me and the advice that you've given me. And I would echo what Kathy just said, actually. I've never met anyone, along with the chairman, I have to say, with such grace under fire and such dignity and such courage, and you'll be sorely missed.
Pat, yeah. General.
I think we could all, each of us has different perspectives on Ronnie's career, but I would just say this, which is that I got to know Ronnie as part of the rebuilding process of the World Trade Center after 9/11, and in an incredibly complex and controversial, engineering complex, politically complex, a lot of stakeholders and communities. Ronnie stood out as somebody who brought everybody together to figure out really complicated issues in a way that made that serve the public optimally, but also created teamwork. And she's done that here for all of us who served under her leadership at the MTA. And I wouldn't be here but for Ronnie, and you really are an inspiration to everybody who's had an opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Commissioner.
18% of MTA's workforce is comprised of women. Nationally, that's 15%. And when I entered this space in 2007, you were one of the women leading a transportation agency at the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. And as an advocate, you were always, as dealing with an advocate, I being the advocate, you were always very accessible and honest, and I appreciated the rapport that you continue to cultivate. And now, working with you on the board, I've always appreciated how you've extended that. And it's been wonderful to see all the ways that you've led, both very publicly and also behind the scenes. And it was quite an honor to see you named as the first woman executive or CEO of the MTA, an honor, quite frankly, that I wish had been made permanent, but maybe that's for the next phase. But thank you very much, Ronnie, for all your leadership and all your support.
Commissioner Tessitore, Commissioner Brown.
So, Ronnie, on behalf of SMART General Chairman Anthony Simon, myself, countless labor leaders throughout the MTA, and most importantly, the workforce who you've always been there for and supported out in the field, we thank you for your dedication and your service and your expertise over the years. We wish you all the best.
Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, Ronnie, I thank you, too. I thank you for giving me the privilege to be wrong around you many times, and you would relay to me that I had probably overstated my case, or in a far more likely event, I was completely to hell wrong. Yet you did so in a graceful manner, and I believe over the years I've learned to modify my overstatements. And you know, if it wasn't for you, you did it in a way that made me not feel like a total idiot. And really, has been a graceful person in many difficult situations. And it's also been fun watching you. We have almost the same calendar trajectory here on you know, it's been really a privilege to work with you. And you know, I hope you enjoy your retirement. But I really, even more so, hope to see you further down the line in another responsible position, though you certainly deserve the relief.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I cut this short?
Please.
So, you know, thank you all. And this, the support, Chairman, the opportunity to continue to work with you, Governor Cuomo having given me this opportunity when I first came back to transit, it's with tremendous pride that I have to be a part of this organization. I will hold you all in my prayers and the 72,000 men and women who deliver this service every day. This is the most important work I've ever done, and I take great pride in having done it, and thank you all for your support. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to acknowledge Darlene Slade, Executive Assistant to the Board, who will be retiring after 33 years of superb service. In that time, Darlene has provided tireless support to the MTA board members and senior leadership in keeping the board office running smoothly always, with professionalism, patience, and the warmest of smiles. Darlene, thanks for your service and best of luck in your next chapter of public service.
And just as an example of Ronnie's leadership, we had a cake for Darlene this morning. Ronnie was the one who brought the cake in. Ronnie got the knife. Ronnie cut the cake. Ronnie handed out the pieces, and Ronnie was the one who toasted Darlene.
Lastly, I'd like to welcome Chief Communications Officer Abby Collins, who started October 1st. Abby oversees, over there in the corner to the right, who oversees all aspects of strategic communications for the agency. Abby's experience in both the public and private sectors will be a tremendous asset to us as we move forward with our historic transformation and deliver on our next capital plan. We're excited to have Abby here and look forward to the sharp and strategic insights she'll bring. Abby, welcome. Good operating news. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some important highlights from recent weeks, including one, increased ridership across all our agencies. And this is a fitting report at the board meeting that Ronnie's leaving, since all the agencies reported to Ronnie, and she is as responsible for what I'm going to talk about in the next minute or two as anyone here. Increased ridership across all our agencies, subways, buses, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad. An reaffirmation of the relentless focus on-time performance and system reliability. Hats off and thanks to Andy, Craig, Kathy, and Phil and their teams. Of particular note is that subway ridership is up 4.5%, and on-time performance remains above 80% for the fourth month in a row, the first time in 5 years that benchmark has been sustained. Our customers are noticing and riding our system more. Weekday major incidents are also down to the lowest number since we started tracking this metric in 2015. I want to thank TWU Local 100 for their hard work, because these gains in subway performance wouldn't be possible without their partnership. Thanks to President Utano and all the members of Local 100 for their dedication to making our system more reliable. Our frontline officers also play a major role in keeping the system running smoothly, maintaining safety and security throughout the transit network for our customers and our employees. And I want to thank the MTA Police and the NYPD for serving and protecting everyone within our system. We've seen great gains for buses as well. I want to commend Andy and Craig Cipriano and thank Commissioner Trottenberg for New York City DOT's partnership on the successful 14th Street busway. In the first few weeks after implementation, it's shown to be a significant success with benefits for more than 30,000 daily riders, with travel time improving up to 36% and M14 SBS service ridership increasing between 17 to nearly 40%. On the M15 SBS, we're leveraging legislative wins that have resulted in the expansion of bus lane camera enforcement to ensure bus lanes are kept clear and our buses can keep swiftly moving. Camera enforcement will be expanding to the M14 SBS and B44 SBS by the end of the year. At TBTA, Danny DiCrescenzo and Allison DiSereno, Peg Terry and their teams have done a phenomenal job on Central Business District tolling, an item that the board will be voting on in just a few minutes, in meeting every milestone to date on or ahead of schedule for Central Business District tolling. There's one such milestone today as you consider the Design, Build, Operate, and Maintain contract award being brought to this board 1 month early. Lastly, we're not only focused on delivering operational improvements, but also sharing this progress with each of you in an open and transparent way. We've launched an interactive budget tool, and I appreciate the comment from Rachel Faust from reInvent Albany on this score, with short overviews of how the MTA budget works and an open budget portable with downloadable data. We're also rolling out updates to several of our performance dashboards to better focus on customer-facing metrics and improve transparency, including adding performance metrics as required by last year's legislative session, and adding new metrics on the bus and Access-a-Ride dashboards as part of our ongoing review and improvements. We're also in the process of revamping our capital program dashboard to reflect the 2020 to 2024 capital program by early next year. We will be continuing to review the data and information we currently provide and working to expand our approach to open data for increased transparency. Lastly, a short update on MTA transformation. We continue to remain focused on transformation and maintaining momentum on multiple fronts. As you know, after the July board approval of the transformation plan, we also set out target deadlines for priority projects. We've been tracking these milestones and working towards them accordingly. One particular milestone was a detailed reorganization implementation plan targeted for October 15th. A draft detailed implementation plan and roadmap have been developed and are currently being reviewed by senior leadership and agency presidents. We'll be briefing the board and the public on this roadmap in November. The roadmap is a big picture look at what we're doing in transformation. It's organized by transformation objectives that align to the MTA strategic priorities, reminding us of the core goals of transportation to change the way the MTA works, to support our people, modernize and innovate, and strengthen core operations. It also outlines initiatives and programs under each objective to help us transform and achieve specific outcomes. With that, I'll now turn it over to Weil Hibry, Senior Vice President of Shared Services, for a presentation on timekeeping modernization. Weil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep my presentation brief. The modernization of our timekeeping system to a biometric system that requires a finger scan is progressing well. There are 3 stages to the project. The first stage is to deploy clocks to where our employees work. And at this point, we have clocks near 92% of our employee base. The second stage is enrolling our employees where their finger scan is registered in the system and is available for active use. And at this point, I'm happy to report that 76% of the employees have been registered on the system. In terms of active use, we have 20% of the employees actively swiping in to use the system today, and we're working towards completion by the first 2 weeks in January. So for the remaining population, that takes us from 92% accessibility to the employee base to 100%. We are piloting 2 systems. One uses mobile phones to register someone's finger scan and start their shift, and the pilot will end in 2 weeks. And we're also using voice biometrics to be able to register employees starting their shift and ending their shift, which will remedy or address the final group of employees. Taking a look at the progress on an agency-by-agency basis, I'll explain this busy chart very quickly. The green bars show that this is the portion of the employee base that is using the system right now with a finger scan feature. The teal color is the group that is enrolled but not yet using the system. And the group that is in a darker blue is swipe only. The goal obviously is to convert all of these circles into green circles, which is within reach for the second week in January. Happy to take any questions at this moment.
Any questions for Weil? Commissioner.
Hi, Weil.
Hi.
On the previous slide, you mentioned retaining somebody's fingerprint on a mobile phone. That would not allow someone else to use that phone to check someone else in, would it?
No, it would be for the employee who's been assigned that phone. They would be registered to check in on that phone, and they will present their start of shift or end of shift using that particular device.
So that device could not be used by another individual?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, it's my understanding that there's, legal limits on the use of the fingerprint, and that the machine scanners we use fall within the range of what those legal limits are. But I'm curious about and at least I believe that to be true, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is the phone scan under the same, it seems to me it's a very complete fingerprint that goes onto here and on my phone, and I'm just curious if there's limits on
So the finger scan we're using is very similar to what is on any common iPhone. It is no different from that. We're locking it using a product called the AirWatch, so that once you register on that phone, it becomes your phone to check in. So it's no different than what's commercially available in almost all of our pockets in this room.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah, Pat, I just want to make sure I've raised this, other people have raised this, that as we fully implement this modernization of our time and attendance system, that we make sure that our payroll systems are fully integrated and can accept the information from the modernization, so we don't have lots of errors and problems when people are using this new system. There was a question of whether or not our payroll systems could be integrated at all, and I just want to make sure that as a board, we're assured and apprised if there are any issues or problems in our ability to do that and how we're going to fix it.
So Commissioner Schwartz, phase 1, and I'll turn to Weil in just a second. Phase 1 always contemplated the installation of biometric clocks without connection to the payroll system. Phase 2 requires and provides for integration with the payroll system. Do you want to speak to it, Wal?
Absolutely. So that's our next phase. Immediately after completing this, we have 3 initiatives. We have 3 other systems that feed payroll in PeopleSoft that are not Kronos. One is PeopleSoft Native, which is for headquarters employees. We have ATS and UTS with our homegrown applications. I'm reviewing statements of work actually to award work to consultants to help us convert to Kronos, and that will start in 2010. We hope to finish PeopleSoft and ATS in 2020, and then shortly thereafter we will do UTS as well.
Yeah, all right. So I just want to make sure I understand a little. So we're going to have Kronos is going to be completed by, or whether you're using a mobile application and a swipe application, whatever it is, by the first, the goal is by the first 2 weeks in January. That's what I heard, correct?
Yes.
So once that's done, are they going to, how, it doesn't sound like the payroll system is going to be set up to accept the information by the first 2 weeks in January.
No.
Am I misunderstanding?
You want to just describe the timeline,
It
please?
takes work. It takes about 6 months to go from where we are today, or where we will be in the second week in January, to using Kronos for directing the swipes into PeopleSoft for proper calculation of payroll. It is a very, very complicated process because all of the payrolls have to be converted to Kronos and tested copiously until they're 100% sure, so we pay people their accurate amounts, whether it's overtime, whether it is straight time, whatever it is. All these rules have to be very carefully converted and very carefully tested several times.
Well, it's also a high-stakes operation in the following sense. We have to assure that every employee gets paid every pay period on time and exactly what they're entitled to. And there are multiple existing payroll systems that have to be integrated with Kronos. But that's the timeline that Wal just described.
I hear you, but here's what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to make this complicated.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to understand it, and to the extent anybody else wants to understand it. So when the Kronos system is fully installed and implemented, it sounds to me from what I just heard, it's going to take about 6 months through testing, whatever, to make sure that we're confident that our payroll systems are integrated to minimize any errors when it comes to doing payroll calculations. So what happens between the middle of January and when we're confident that PeopleSoft software works and is fully integrated? What happens between the middle of January and X period of time? We're not using the Kronos system?
Yes.
We are using the Kronos system?
Yes, we're collecting employee swipes. We're exporting the data from the clocks into a data warehouse. We are running comparison reports to what the official paying systems are. Those are ATS, UTS, and PeopleSoft. We're comparing those to the swipes. We are highlighting any variation between the pay and the swipe to the proper groups, whether it's timekeepers, whether it's managers, whether it's MTA audit, and so on. Those will be addressed until final conversion, which, as I said, will be in 2020 for 2. For the third one, it'll probably be 2021. And then all of the swipes will flow directly from Kronos into PeopleSoft without any intermediary system.
Thank you.
Anybody else for a while? All right, good. The minutes of September's board meeting have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second, all in favor? Aye. Any abstentions or noes? Thank you. Commissioner Schwartz, let's begin with the report from the Finance Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on Monday and reports on the following. There's one procurement for approval. This action requests the board declare competitive bidding impractical or inappropriate for all MTA design build projects to be solicited between now and the end of 2022, and determine that it is in the public interest to issue competitive requests for proposals for such contracts pursuant to New York State Public Authorities Law Sections 1209 and 1265 and the all-agency general contracting procurement guidelines, board approval for each proposed contract will still be required. The committee recommends this action. I move it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or noes? Thank you.
There are 5 real estate action items this month described on pages 64 through 76 of the board book distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these real estate items, and I move them.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Thank you.
This concludes the Finance Committee report.
Commissioner Law, report on the Joint Commuter Rail Committee, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Metro-North Railroad Committee and the Long Island Railroad Committee met jointly and reports the following. There is one action for ratification. The railroads request the board ratify the contract modifications between Bombardier Siemens PTC Consortium and Metro-North Railroad and Long Island Railroad to address board concerns regarding the implementation of positive train control by federally mandated deadline. As described in the staff summary on pages 77 and 78, this agreement provides for additional damages and penalties with an aggregate cap of $100 million. The agreement also provides that there are presently no grounds for debarment as a result of the agreed-upon adjustment to certain milestones in the contracts. The committee recommended this action item at the committee. However, I'd like to make a motion to table this agreement at this time.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any abstentions or noes?
There was also one non-competitive procurement for Long Island Railroad for $3 million. The committee also recommended this procurement. However, I'd like to make a motion to table this procurement pending a vote on the Siemens Bombardier agreement discussed above. Motion to table.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Abstentions or noes?
And there is one request to use the RFP process to replace the Babylon and Hillside motor generators. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Sorry. All in favor? Any abstentions or noes? Thank you.
This concludes the Joint Railroad Committee report. Thank you.
Commissioner Feinberg.
Mr. Chairman, the Transit and Bus Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There is one action item for board approval. The action for board approval is to adopt the finding statement for the MTA New York City Transit reconstruction and expansion of the Jamaica Bus Depot located at 16518 Tuskegee Airman Way, Jamaica, New York. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Second. All in favor? Any abstentions or noes?
There are 5 competitive procurements, 4 for New York City Transit for $52.1 million and 1 for MTA Bus for $150.9 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions or noes? Thank you.
There are 3 ratifications for New York City Transit for $46 million. The committee recommended these ratifications at committee. At this time, I'd like to make a, do I need to?
Motion to table.
Motion, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to table the Siemens contract.
Second. All in favor? Any abstentions or noes? Thank you.
I'd like to move the Talus and Hallmark ratifications for approval.
Second. All in favor? Abstentions or noes? Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Before turning it over to Commissioner Lacewell, Danny, I'm going to ask you to talk about the job that you and your team did, Allison DiSereno and Peg Terry, on Central Business District tolling, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Lacewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the TBTA team for getting the Central Business District Design, Build, Operate, and Maintain award to the board today. First, I'd just like to thank Governor Cuomo for getting it on the statute, for Pat Foy and Ronnie Hakem for their guidance and support and leadership through this process. Dr. Allison DiSereno, did I say it right, Allison? Good, okay. Allison's my senior VP and the project lead. Peg Terry, senior VP General Counsel. Brian Bezier, VP Procurement. Lynn Gore, who's the Deputy Director of Procurement. Sergio Reyes, Senior Deputy Director of Tolls and Facility Systems. Jason Lang, Executive Assistant General Counsel, and Romulo DeSantis, the Deputy Chief Engineer and Project Manager of this program. There were also countless others in the CBDT team who gave significant time during this process, and the other people behind the scenes that every day work towards making this program successful. So thank you to Madam Chair Lacewell as well for Monday. This is truly an historic event, and I didn't want it to go unnoticed, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you, Danny. Commissioner.
Thank you. I can take absolutely no credit, but I appreciate the acknowledgement, having chaired this committee for about 3 meetings. But I do echo the remarks and congratulations to the entire team for their really superb professional work getting this to us ahead of schedule. Mr. Chairman, the Bridges and Tunnels Committee met on Monday. There are 5 competitive procurements for $585.66 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second, all in favor?
This concludes the Bridges and Tunnels Committee
Sorry,
report.
abstentions or noes? No. Commissioner Vanderpool.
Yes, and Pat, I abstain on the procurement for the engineers, not for the congestion pricing.
Thank you, duly noted. Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to make a brief comment on the Central Business District tolling procurement. So I made some comments on Monday during committee meeting, but I do also, in addition to what President Danny, all the staff members that he shouted out, I also want to shout out the advocacy community. Many of you have heard me say this already, but in 2007, I actually joined to work exclusively on congestion pricing, which has been a decades-long public policy discussion. And this moment would not have happened if it not had been for the steadfastness and dedication and commitment of advocates who brought a lot of data to the table, put in a lot of legwork and groundwork to make this happen, particularly with our state legislature and our city elected officials. And many of them were called out, particularly by Ellen Shannon at PCAC as groups. But I think it's important that this board also recognize, and I know that it does in many ways, the contributions of the advocacy community for this very, indeed, historic moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? I'm now going to ask for a motion to convene an executive session to discuss matters which, if disclosed, would imperil the public safety pursuant to Section 105(1)A of the New York State Public Officers Law. Before I ask for a motion and a second, I just want to note that no action will be taken at this executive session. We'll come back and adjourn the meeting, but no action will be taken. I move it. Is there a second? Second. Good. All in favor? Terrific. Thank you. Motion to go back into public session? Second, all in favor? Terrific. I just want to report briefly, there was an executive session on security matters. No motion was made, no action was taken. Having said that, as a reminder, our next board meeting is Thursday, November 14th. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved. Second, all in favor? Adjourned. Thank you. Reach is finishing the call. As soon as he gets off the phone.
Are we going to get Floyd and Nyford?
Andy will be here. Matt will stand there. Back, there he is. Heads up, everybody. Here we go. So I want to lead with two things today. One is reported increased ridership across all agencies, 4.5% at the subways, and on-time performance, fourth month in a row above 80% and increasing across the agencies. That's not coincidental. It's the work of a lot of hard work on a part of a lot of people. I want to note its coincidence with Ronnie Hakum's last board meeting because I think that her role as managing director and her oversight of the operating agencies, which is one of her primary tasks as managing director, has added tremendous value. And I think it's fitting that at Ronnie's last board meeting, she's going to be with us through the November, as I mentioned, that the increased ridership and on-time performance is reported. So I think that's worth noting. And hopefully somebody will make it Ronnie Hakum Day before she leaves. Second is the board's approval of Central Business District tolling, incredibly important. Obviously a significant part of the $51 billion in the MTA's capital plan, and bringing it to the board and having it unanimously approved a month early, I think it's an extraordinary achievement. And with that, I'll take questions. Alfonso?
Train control, and I want to follow up with a question about the Sandy anniversary, if you don't mind. First, could you tell us why the PTC agreement was tabled along with the other Siemens contracts, and whether you have any reservations about taking debarment off the table, given the independent engineers' latest forecast that it's really going to be down to the wire and getting PTC done on time?
Yeah, so on the Siemens Bombardier agreements, they were approved unanimously, I think, on Monday by the committee. Some board members felt the need for additional information. They've been tabled. They don't have to go back to the committees, and they'll be presented to the board actually only 3 weeks from today.
And any concerns about, again, taking debarment off the table with
No, I don't think so. I think the agreement that was reached is hugely positive for the MTA in terms of liquidated damages that didn't exist before. I think Siemens and Bombardier, who have appeared before the board and expressed a high degree of confidence, which Metro-North and Long Island Railroad and the MTA share, I think they've got plenty of incentive to get it done and get it done by the federal deadline. The agreement that was reached, I think, even emphasizes that to a greater extent.
And the other thing I want to ask you, if you don't mind, next week is the 7th anniversary of Sandy. I just want to kind of get your general thoughts on how much better prepared you think the MTA is today to withstand something like that if it were to happen.
Look, we live in a time of volatile climates, obviously, and more and more extreme weather events. The governor's fond of mentioning, how many storms he's been responsible on behalf of the state government for responding to, and comparing it to, a lesser number when his father was in office. And I think that's everybody's experience. I think we've spent wisely billions of dollars that the federal government gave us. We met with the FTA when they were here for APTA, a week or so ago, and we're proud of the work that's been done. I don't think anybody can guarantee that in the event of a superstorm Sandy or something that's 1.5 or 2 times that, that there isn't going to be disruption to the entire economy, region, perhaps nation. But I think we've spent the money. I can tell you, Alfonso, that resiliency is a part of every project at this point.
Thank you.
Hi, Pat. I know it's not habit for any MTA official to negotiate in public, but what was your reaction to the tone, at least, that the union took today in the public speaking and some of the name calling?
Well, look, we're not going to negotiate in public. If I wanted a job where I was universally loved, I would have done something else. And I think unions have had problems with MTA chairs in the past, and I think it goes with the job, and beyond that, not negotiating in public.
You should have been a reporter if you wanted to be loved.
and highly compensated. Andrew.
Yesterday, Andy spoke with us about his resignation letter and rescinding it. And one of the things he told us was that he discussed with you, and I believe Ronnie as well, things he needed to be addressed in order for him to feel better about staying. He said those things have been addressed. Without getting super specific, can you give us a general sense of what it is that you've made better to make your transit president more comfortable?
Look, I'll tell you one thing that's made the transit president more comfortable, and I think he spoke about this yesterday and before, and it's called $51.5 billion of capital, of which $41 billion, unprecedented levels of spending, go to $41 billion go to subways and buses. I think that's behind us. I think that Andy and the entire team here, including me and Ronnie, are looking forward. I started this press conference intentionally with the improved performance and the increased ridership, which I think is important, and we're going to do everything we can to build on that. And Andy is all in for achieving those things at subways and buses.
But unless the timeline is off, that money had already been approved before he wrote the resignation letter.
Yeah, but as I think about the $51.5 billion of capital every day, it becomes larger to me and more real, like we're a day closer to the CPRB approving it. Dana.
Pat, given Andy's resignation, do you feel like you're doing an adequate job protecting your staff from gubernatorial pressure?
Well, look, Andy's here. He's done an extraordinary job, as have Phil Eng and Kathy Rinaldi and Danny, and the proof is in the pudding. And I think the proof of the pudding is increased ridership and on-time performance at the subways, 4 months in a row above 80%. Paul.
Hi, Pat. The pudding is also the MTA itself, and there are an awful lot of ingredients missing or leaving the MTA. Cedric left at the end of last year because of interference from the governor's office. Max Young only lasted about 9 months here. You're 2 weeks past your deadline of hiring a CTO. Ronnie moves to part-time next month, so you only have 1 more week of her full-time. Andy resigned and then rescinded it. Do you have a problem retaining and attracting talent? And I'd also add to that list, obviously Ronnie fulfills an extremely important function here, and you still don't have somebody to replace her.
Look, we'll report on senior hirings when we're available to, when we're in a position to do that. I can tell you we've made substantial progress on the CTO and COO positions, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
But as far as actually like attracting and retaining talent, that's not going so well this year.
I don't agree. I think first we've got an incredibly talented team of people who've risen through the organization, in addition to Andy, who obviously started on the underground stops in Australia and Toronto. I think we've been able to attract talent. I think there are people here, for instance, Allison DiSereno, I don't think I pronounced it right, was a colleague at the Port Authority who I played a small role in encouraging her to come to the MTA. She's the leader of the Central Business District tolling program. I sleep soundly at night, and I think Danny does as well, knowing that Allison and a veteran lawyer here, Peg Terry and Lynn Gore and others are working on that project. I think there are lots of young people who've been hired in positions that you all don't see, that aren't presenting at board meetings, but will someday. I think one of our goals is to make the MTA an attractive place for millennials and for those who want to do public service, the place to work.
But also it's very important that the person at the top is in a secure position, and Danny's been acting ever since Cedric left. You don't have a permanent president at Bridges and Tunnels.
Paul, I'm not going to talk on personnel matters. I think Danny is doing a terrific job, as evidenced by the board's approval of Central Business District tolling today. To me, Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority is largely a no-drama operation. It also makes a lot of money, which subsidizes mass transit. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, TBTA team, for that. David.
Can you, going back to the question about the CBTC related contracts, can you just clarify what additional information is needed and why that led to the tabling of those contracts? And I had a unrelated busway question. Is wondering if you, because it seems like there's been more traffic on the avenues around 14th Street, if you've been monitoring bus speeds there and have noticed a slowdown.
So on the busway, I'm going to defer to Craig or Andy. Is Craig here? Yeah, Craig.
I guess I have a short answer here. So, I mean, the busway has been an overwhelming success, as we've, shown at the committee. We don't see any appreciable impact on our north-south routes in the area.
And just I wanted to see if you could elaborate on what additional information the board needed to move those contract or ratify those contracts related to the.
Yeah, there were information requests. We're in the process of fulfilling those. I'm not going to get into detail. And as I said, the committee approved it unanimously on Monday. They were tabled. They don't have to go back to the committee, and they'll be presented to the board in November. Clayton.
Two things, Pat. One, do you want to maybe explain the wackadoodle email you sent to Utano? It seemed to upset a lot of people this morning during public comment. And then I have one more, but let's start with that one.
Yeah, look, the conclusion of the email was the position I've taken from the beginning, which is we want to sit down and negotiate a fair contract. Having distractions in the way of that didn't make sense. So our goal remains the same as what I believe the union's is, which is a fair negotiated contract. And that's what we're working on and looking forward to.
Okay, and then one other thing from today, the board passed without discussion a resolution to do non-competitive bidding for all design build projects. Can you explain to the public why that's a good thing and why that might improve the way you guys bid out some of these big projects?
Yeah, look, Jana, you want to speak to that?
Clayton, I think you misunderstood. What it is they formally under the Public Authorities Law, you have to use competitive low price bidding in order to use the mechanisms of design build, which is a competitive RFP, and it is competitive. There needed to be this, sort of formal action to exclude all of those contracts from the rule, the Public Authorities Law rule that you had to have competitive low price bidding. So we've moved in the direction of a competitive RFP system consistent with the design build concept.
Emma.
Hi, I have a two-parter too. The first question is, can the subway continue to improve without Andy Byford? I mean, if I'm submitting a resignation letter, I'm pretty serious probably about leaving. So can the subway continue to improve without him here?
I don't agree with the premise. Andy's here. I expect he's going to be here for a long time. His and his team's performance speaks for themselves in terms of increased ridership, on-time performance, and I expect that to continue. The thing that Andy and I are both looking forward to take subway on-time performance and customer service to the next level is $41 billion of capital, which we hope will be approved in the first quarter.
And second question, I think Dick Ravitch said on the record that he was worried you might leave too because of interference from the governor's office. Are you staying, or are you satisfied with your job?
Look, this is a very challenging, satisfying job, and I've spent a lot of time in the private sector. I've spent a lot of time at the Port Authority, as some of you know, during a challenging period. I guess I like challenges is the conclusion you come to, one might come to, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the capital plan approved, getting the transformation approved and implemented rather, because I think that'll be incredibly important, and looking forward to all those things. Yes, sir.
I understand that you don't want to. Thank you. I understand that you don't want to characterize your reaction to the tone expressed by the workers here this morning. But the fact is, it's been several months. You still don't have a deal. Why don't you have a deal?
Because we haven't reached agreement, and it takes two to tango. I think we share a mutual interest, which is having a fair contract and getting it done. And beyond that, not going to negotiate in the public or get into details.
You can't tell us what the holdup is.
No, sir. Please.
Yeah, question about the bolt that came down in Queens. So one day later, what's the latest on the investigation?
a lot of concern about there was some kind of containment or netting underneath, but still that bolt managed to get around.
Yeah,
down
look,
onto a car.
there's a system in place. It obviously didn't work. Thank God no one was hurt. Transit is doing an investigation as to what happened and what steps have to be put in place. I'll note not that it necessarily would have helped on this, but Andy and his team several months ago are working and implementing on a netting solution, which not necessarily would have applied here. We're very focused on it, and we'll be updating as we go forward.
Do you know if anyone's back out there today to do anything further on that site?
I'm not going to make it up. Tim Minton will get back to you. Please.
Hey, Pat. Where is the MTA's the MTA PBA with negotiations and discussions about getting body cameras on the new MTA police?
So that's a good question. Discussions with the MTA, PBA, and police unions are underway. They have been for some time. I'm personally in favor of cameras. I think they are good for safety. They're good for transparency. And beyond that, I'm not going to get into the details of discussions with any union. That's the approach I've taken across the board. Rich Lamb?
I just wondered, I'm wondering about the underlying question of pressure from the governor's office. Do you see it as a positive thing or as a corrosive thing?
Look, I agree with what Andy said yesterday, and I believe this the whole time. The fact that the chief executive of the state of New York is focused on transit and is focused on improving transit, on-time performance, the single largest proposed capital plan in the history of the MTA, and got central business district tolling, incredible achievements and incredible things for the MTA and our customers. I think that is a level of commitment to transit, which is so important, not only from a transportation point of view, but a financial and a job point of view. It's a good thing.
But is there a question of micromanagement going on here at all, from your viewpoint?
No, sir, Rich. Dan.
I was going to ask about the union, and I still have that question, but just to go off Rich's question, you said the governor is focused on transit, but you're also focused on putting on conferences for him, like the tech conference. I had a source tell me New York City Transit for weeks had to grind to a halt to put this on.
Dan,
what's the level of
Dan, that assertion,
focus?
That assertion is ridiculous, right? I was at the conference. I spoke at the conference. I think it's incredibly important. The subways, as was pointed out on the video at the conference, has driven technological change, right? I talked about the Fordham Professor and the 181st Street station. And we're going to spend $51.5 billion, and it behooves us to make sure that whatever technology is available in the United States or around the world that can help our customers and make their commutes quicker, safer, more reliable, more resilient, we're all in for it.
All right, and then just related to that, on the union negotiations, which I know you're not going to comment on, but did you think any line was crossed where one official raised the tarring and feathering of you of showing up to a rally?
I thought the line was crossed only at one point when someone spoke about Ronnie Hakem, I thought, in disgusting, defamatory, and false, and that's why I cut that speaker down. Cut that speaker off. I didn't do that with respect to any other speaker. I'm a big believer in the First Amendment. I assume everybody at this dais is too. And thanks a lot.
Pat, just one question on the union. Are you in communication with Cuomo on it?